Man, I never get tired of listening to that intro.
It's so good, actually.
Yeah. All right, so welcome to the We For John podcast. This is part 2. Last time we talked about a situation where a friend was talking about suicide and the things that I kind of said to help kind of talk him down. We also talked about the fallout that happens on the other side of it, and then laid out the staggering stats, and then charities that are working hard to help prevent suicide. Today I'm joined by Tyr Mjolnir. We'll talk about some things that we as men can do for one another, and I'll kind of open up about my past attempts and kind of why I'm still here. But yeah, thanks for joining me, Tyr. Hope you're having a good day so far.
Of course, it's every day is an adventure. We'll put it that way. But we like the title says, and like we for John.
Yeah, my day was pretty rough. It was the most Mondayest Friday ever. So not only did I have my routes aren't too bad, but on the way back from one of my routes, I was pulled over by a DOT, and when you're in a big truck, that's a big deal. You gotta make sure everything's on the up and up, otherwise it's a huge fine. And of course, I wasn't speeding. So when I'm in my work truck, I typically go about 2 to 3 underneath the speed limit, just so that I'm in the safe zone.
Sure.
But of course, he's comes up to my door. He's like, "You know how fast you were going, son?" And in my head, I'm like, I'm not your son. But then I immediately pointed to my phone. It's like, nope, my GPS was saying I was going 62. My speedometer was also saying I was going 62. And then he's like, well, I clocked you going 70. It's like, that's not possible because this is a work area. So there's traffic cones all over the place. And it's like, I am not about to get $1,000 fine because I'm speeding. Because it's just because in the vehicle I'm in, it's like $500 base. But then if your work area, it's doubled. And I'm like, no. So no, everything was all right. He's like, oh, I'm gonna give you a warning, and in my head I'm thinking, warning for what? I did everything right.
Sounds like somebody was. It's early in the month. He's not trying to get his quota, is he?
I don't think so.
He's trying to get ahead of the game.
But it's also coming closer to summer, and you're gonna see more and more big trucks out. Like I don't drive a huge truck. I just have my CDLB. So, but.
Okay. What do you got, 24 footer or what were you?
35, I think. Okay. I haven't measured the length. I just know that it's 12 foot 2 inches tall.
Got it.
Because you gotta make
that's an important.
Yes, because you gotta make sure you don't go under any bridge that is under that, because then it's gonna be what do they call it? Can opener.
Yeah, I work in warehousing, so and safety and security in warehousing. So I often deal with issues that are related to drivers or driver deliveries. As a matter of fact, my company I work for does a lot of deliveries, and 2 weeks ago, we can opened a top of a rental van, because most of them are using rental truck, I should say.
Yeah.
Of the tree branch. So I'm well versed.
Gotcha. So is that the baby in your lap?
This is the baby. This is BB. She's my only hope for a child. But she is, like I was telling you earlier, she's had a long storied life. She's a fighter. Like I said, the good news is we should be able to medicate with some of her recent issues, and hopefully she'll get back to healing. She's got a feeding tube in right now, which is like the scariest thing in the world for me. Yeah. Because I am not I've never had to deal with that kind of thing. So got to keep the feeding tube clean, and if she doesn't eat, we got to feed her through the tube, and she's trying to recover from her recent surgery.
Well, we hope for a quick and speedy recovery.
Yeah, it's my baby girl.
Yep. All right, so in last episode we talked about suicide. We talked about the stats. Today I kind of want to go more in depth, like what can so the first question is, what as men in our society, what can we do for other men, especially those that are prone to self-harm? Looking at the stats, saying that depending on whether the person's married or unmarried, their version of suicide is different. So if you're married, they're going to use a gun or any kind of weapon. But if you're unmarried, you're more likely to hang yourself or use other means that are like harder to find, I guess. And Raptor pointed out that someone using a gun, the police is going to be the one to clean that up.
Yeah.
But if you hang yourself, it's a silent crime.
Right. And
you don't, you stumble on that scene versus you hearing the scene for a gunfight. So
is there a distinction, as you kind of pointed out, the difference in like the method is there a distinction in the frequency between single and married? Like, is there a higher rate of suicide among married men versus single men? I'm just curious.
When I was doing the research, they didn't really have much of a correlation. The only thing that they said is that the methods changed based on who it was. Yeah. So yesterday was very stat heavy, but today I just wanted to focus on, questioning, and then I also want to talk about your community and if you support charities and stuff like that. So
yeah.
So like the first question, what do you think we as men should do in the society? I know a lot of times we kind of play off as like we're tough, we got everything, and we're supposed to have everything figured out. But is there anything that you think we can do that will kind of pivot that change?
Yeah, and this is something that we talk about because I do, while I don't call myself any kind of mental health streamer, I've been a part of other podcasts, and I've done we have conversations that are very heavy in my own content sometimes about mental health, but it's really that true connection with people, right? Like, so for me, and since suicide is the topic, and I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later, I've also attempted suicide. So I've been in dark places that maybe others are experiencing or are headed down that road towards. So I don't want to say I can see the signs because sometimes they're different for others, although, there are some telltale signs, but it's that true connection. It's being able to talk to somebody and understand, the canned response. And we kind of discussed this on episode 1, like how are you doing? How's it going? And the canned response is like, oh, living the dream, or another day in paradise, or whatever the case may be. But being able to either have that connection or to decipher through or kind of push through in a way that actually gets a real answer, and also encouraging others, like by example. So like if somebody asks me how I'm doing, there'll be times where I'll be like, I'm terrible. I'm not good. And a lot of times that throws them for a loop, and if they're not well versed in kind of like picking through that, they won't ask and kind of follow up and push through. But one of the things that I try to do is really connect, like, how are things going? Like, ask additional questions, like how's your wife, how is your family, how's your spouse, how are your kids, like those kinds of things, to encourage people to open up. It's that the hard part usually is getting them to open themselves up.
Yeah.
Especially if it's somebody you're not close enough to be able to have those conversations where they're comfortable telling you that things aren't okay. Because it's like we're very good as a society at having these. I hate to quote like Fight Club, but it's one of my favorite movies. But like these single serving friends, these single serving interactions, where it's it's a canned interaction, it's a one time thing, you're an acquaintance, you never really get to know that person. And getting to know them or having that relationship could change their life. It literally could. I tweeted something the other day that got some traction that I didn't really expect, but it's like, I'm not okay. Like, I'm struggling. There's a lot of stuff going on in my professional life. The dog is always a stress for me and her health, because again, she's my version of a child. She's my baby. And it's been tough for the past 3 to 4 weeks, where my grandfather passed away. There's just all this stuff that happened that sometimes is like, I want you guys to know that I'm roughing it out here too. We'll get through it. We'll find a way. We'll connect. If you want to talk to me about it, I will totally have those conversations with you. But it's okay to not be okay, and I think that people need to understand that more. And it's not just a saying to get clout. It's like, legit, you're gonna have good days and bad days, and on those bad days, it's really important that we are able to connect with people. And maybe it's just lending an ear. Maybe it's just having the conversation. I'm really bad because I am like very much an analytical mindset. I try to solve problems. So if somebody comes with me with a problem, and this is like a male-female thing that happens sometimes too, where women, they want to talk and they want to kind of tell you about their day. And men often are like that, and they'll be like, hey, well, let me start solving your problems. But really, they just want to tell you about how they feel.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to listen. And so I've the past few years, I've been trying to practice to just listen more, offer solace, open up, and be there for people, and not necessarily try to fix their problems unless it's something that's really heavy and it's like, man, I'm worried about you. Like, how can I help you get out of this headspace?
Yeah, I think, me personally, I can see that is like the guy that is wanting to jump in and fix your problems is not like, yeah, he's there, he's wanting to help fix your problems, but personally I can see that there's a sign that he just wants to feel needed. If he's there, if even if he, helps carry in the groceries,
Right.
like, seeing a problem, trying to find a solution to fix it, and then being the one to put the fixings there, he just wants to feel needed, and so that could
Is
be a
that
sign in itself.
is that a male thing, you think, too? Like we wanna be able to, because there's a lot of pressure sometimes to be the provider, to be the one who solves the problems. Like is that an innately male characteristic, or is that just something that we have to think about as people?
Um, I would say that it's very characteristic for a man to want to feel that way because society has pushed him to be in that direction.
Right.
So, over many generations, the guy being the provider, you know,
Right.
if he can't provide, then he's got to come up with another way to provide. And it doesn't always have to be monetary. Sometimes it's just um, like the dad that can put things together. Need a
Yeah.
deck? I can put a deck in for you. You need your toilet pulled up, new wax ring put in, and
Yeah.
everything spick and span. I'll do it.
Yeah. Right.
So it's not always a monetary providing. I think it's just like they just need to provide something so that they can feel needed.
It's funny you say that. For whatever reason, my mind goes to like stay-at-home dads.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like there's such a stigma towards that, though. You know what I mean? Because of the society that we have, it's
Yeah,
like the stay-at-home mom. Like, okay, well, that makes sense. Like, that's the homemaker, the domestic engineer, whatever the fancy
yeah.
term they want to use for it. But then you think about like a stay-at-home dad, and it feels like it's so uncommon and it's
Hmm.
so looked down upon. Even though like to me, and I've never raised children of my own. I've helped raise kids and I've helped look after siblings, but um, to me, raising a kid is like the hardest job. That's like the hardest job.
Yeah.
Like so to be a stay-at-home parent of any kind, to me is really respectable.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, the dad doesn't just make that decision all on its own that he's going to be the stay-at-home dad. It's a partner to partner conversation.
Right.
Depending on however your partnership is, whether it's male male, female female, male female, doesn't matter. All of them are
Yeah.
valid, but it's a partner conversation that has to happen. And so a lot of people don't realize that that conversation happens. They just assume, oh well, the dad wants to be lazy. He just wants to stay at home, watch football, all day, and you know under the guise of taking care of the kids. But that's not the
Right.
case. Like, maybe the mom admits or the dad admits that they have a fault. They're not good at raising their kids. Maybe
Right.
maybe they don't have the most patience. Maybe maybe they're just not a good meal planner.
Yeah.
Whatever the reason may be, but most society just, oh, the dad's just being lazy. He just wanted an excuse to stay home. He should
Yeah.
go out and get a job. But especially with 2020 and like everything turning on its head,
Right.
I would love to see what the stat is of like how many dads became stay-at-home dads because of COVID. I
Yeah.
would love to see how many moms rose up and they became the provider.
Right.
Because those stats are important too.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I just think there's a lot of social norms that need to be deconstructed before we can really start seeing progress.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things, a lot of those stereotypes, and a lot of those things that we look down upon for whatever reason that have been ingrained in our society. Like it's completely okay for the female or the female presenting partner or whatever it is to be the breadwinner. That's like okay. Like there's nothing wrong with your partner, and if it's a male female relationship, for the female to make more. Like there's like like why is it's a very capitalist thing for there to be any kind of feeling of lack of value because you don't make as much money as your partner. Which is I'm blessed because my wife, and I, we have completely separate finances. And like she has her own bank account, I have my own, and when it comes to things that we share, we find a way to contribute both to those. So I could probably count on one hand, if that, the number of times that we fight about finances. But society as a whole has this weird thing where like whoever is the breadwinner is more valuable to the relationship, and that's kind of it's kind of dumb, honestly.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that you and your wife have separate finances. I remember seeing a TikTok. It was an interview that Steve Harvey was doing. He was talking about how a married couple should have 4 bank accounts. One for the male, one for the female, both separate. You know, that's your fun money.
Yeah.
Then you have an account for the bills. You know, so all the money that you need for your bills goes into this one account, and then there's one account completely separate of everything, and that's your savings. That's your future planning. And so I think personally, I would love to get on something like that, but we have a little bit of work to do because right now I'm the current the breadwinner of the family. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. She's taking care of the kids. She's doing a phenomenal job.
Well, I'm sure.
She might say that, oh, well, struggle bus is real over here. But, I appreciate that because it takes a sacrifice to do that.
It does. And not to mention, like, even, more ridiculous financial talk, but like the cost of just childcare, preschool or whatever, aside from some of the other conversations around, like, are they safe or whatever, alone is ridiculous. So, like, it is not cheap if you were going to try to go some other route where, one of you guys would work and you'd have the kids and, some kind of childcare.
Yeah. In most cases, it kind of just ended up like if she ended up working and we got childcare, it was pretty much like a moot point because like basically her income literally covers the childcare.
So crazy.
So, yeah. No, she's been a stay-at-home mom for the majority of our kids' life. And I greatly appreciate it. I don't tell her as often as I should, but I definitely appreciate it because then I can do my thing. I can go to work, work the 9 to 5, be home. I feel like I'm providing. Absolutely. So it's funny that we were talking. We kind of transitioned it naturally, talking about like male stereotypes. So the next question I have is like, how do you think that the typical male stereotype plays into the rising male suicide rate?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've kind of talked about a lot of different ones already, this episode and last episode. Whether it's the gym bro culture and the I have to have the 6-pack abs to the I have to provide for my family, right? So like, there's a lot of this pressure from media for all of these things for men, and in the meantime, by the way, you can't have feelings. Like, you have to be completely stoic. And you can't cry, and you shouldn't be hurt by these things. So I think like, it's in a way a perfect storm, and it's on. I wish I could say it's getting better. There are definitely people who are out there making their mark. People who are trying to change the norm, even if it's small to start. Right, like one of the things that we've talked. I've cried on stream. We've had deep conversations. We've talked about my father and the kind of his the relationship he and I had that didn't really turn into anything that was viable or constructive until I was already an adult, just because of the way that he was also raised. So I think it takes that, right? It takes all of us being open and saying, hey, listen, it's okay to feel these ways and have feelings, and it doesn't matter what your gender is or how you identify. It starts there and trying to fix that problem. We're not there because the majority of what people consume through what is now probably social media, which would have been like TV and movies, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Social media is still the same, right? You're still seeing a lot of, the big masculine man and the superhero and the folks who are very strong but not necessarily vulnerable. I think that's what has to change. We have to find a way to get that out there. Like, it's not one dimensional. People have emotions. They have bad days. They're allowed to cry. If we can find a way to get that out there, where the emotional male with an emotional intelligence can exist, it's going to be a lot easier to start working through and breaking these barriers. Because even in the topic of therapy, it's like, especially for like mental health for men, it's like, oh, you're going to a therapist? Like, you can't just like, again, man up, like we talked about last episode. You can't just man up and tough it out and get through that. So that's another thing that like we need to find a way to break the barrier down on, is like, it's okay to talk to somebody about these things, and it's okay if that person is a professional. It's, there's nothing wrong with that.
So I think with this current rising generation, so that'd be like my kids, you know, they're 11 and 10. I think right now they're in a good starting spot because, you know, they're growing up with shows like I think the best example that I've seen so far of like a proper dad relationship, like with their kids, with their spouse, is and it's one of my nephew's favorite shows is Bluey.
Okay,
If
you mentioned this.
Yeah, so if you've seen that show, like, you know, there's same sex couples that in the show, and they, you know, they're open to talk about it. It's like, why does that kid have two dads, or why does that kid have two moms? And they're open to talk about it. He says, you know, well, maybe their mom liked a girl, and, you know, don't yuck somebody's yum. But then they're also so quick to show that it's okay to be vulnerable, because there's a couple episodes where the dad is really struggling, and you could tell that he's struggling. He's trying to keep it all in, and at the very end, he kind of, you know, one of the kids, either Bingo or Bluey, you know, will talk to the dad and say, hey, you know, is everything okay? And he's able to say, no, things are not okay, but for you, they're okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, says, you know, it's okay that dad has some struggles. Right. And I think my kids' generation currently has a good leg up because they're starting with those good examples.
Yeah.
Versus when we were kids, we had, you know, Raphael, the big brute, you know, he was not about to let anything, you know, put a kink in his armor.
Right. No, that's good, you know, and I'm, for me, not having children, I don't get exposed to a lot of the stuff. Like you say Bluey to me, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like the last thing that I can really think of, you know, I don't even watch kids shows, but I have a niece and another niece on the way. And so, you know, I kind of start to see some of the things that they're being introduced to. And it's just crazy how media can swing things, right? Like the media that we consume can kind of shoot us one way or the other. You know, coming out of World War II and kind of into the Vietnam, is just the era that my parents were born in. You know, it was pretty much like the big tough guy, and, you know, the father goes to work and the mother stays home, and kind of that was the culture that was reciprocated and fed to them through media. I think that started to change in the 80s and 90s, like, you know, when I was born. So it's good to see that it's continuing to evolve, because, you know, even nowadays, I mean, with the way that it is here in the US, you know, most families it's tough to survive off a single income too. So like 2 working parents is important, like, you know, whatever that looks like. So, it's good to see that media has the ability to go in the right direction, but my hope is that it continues to go that way, where we can teach things like compassion, and true love, you know, across this new generation, these new generations that are coming up. You know, to your point, things like same-sex parents, or, you know, maybe parents who don't identify as any gender, or whatever it is, like that kind of stuff can be swayed, and it's good to hear that we're headed in that direction.
Yeah. Do you watch a whole lot of Pixar movies?
I actually don't. I have a fundamental difference of opinion with Disney, and Disney now owns Pixar, I believe. So like I try to stay away from that.
So you haven't seen The Incredibles?
I have not.
Okay.
I know what it is, but I haven't seen it.
All right. So in The Incredibles, you have the dad, Bob. He's, you know, Mr. Incredible. So I think he's like a pretty good example, kind of talking about like the male stereotype. So, you know, he's got super strength, you know, if you got a jar that needs open, he's your guy. But you need a car lifted up, he's your guy. You need to push a train, he's your guy. So when he goes from being a hero to then heroes having to like go away because it was getting too costly for the government to keep fixing their problems. You know, they destroy half the city. Well, the government's got to step in and put it back together, and the hero doesn't get any of the fallback. So, I don't remember like the time frame, but like eventually the heroes had to go away, and they all had to become, you know, they started families. And so Bob, you know, is now an insurance agent, and he absolutely hates his job. But being the hero, when prying ears aren't hearing, he's quick to, you know, tell like the old lady, he's like, hey, if you want this to be taken care of, this, you need to do this. He was like, look, write this down. This is how you're going to get your coverage. And, you know, then he gets pulled to the office. He's like, you need to stop giving away all our secrets. We're supposed to make money, not give it away. But then, so at the end of that movie, you know, heroes kind of come back. Bob feels like he has a purpose.
Yeah.
He started sneaking away and being a hero for hire type situation. It led to the bad guy, you know, revealing his hand, saying, "Oh, you were doing this for me, so that I could find a way to kill you." And at the end of the movie, heroes come back. Well, transition to Incredibles 2. Society doesn't want Bob. They don't want Mr. Incredible. They want Elastigirl, which is the wife.
Okay. Right.
And so then he has to transition from being the working dad to now being the stay-at-home dad.
Okay.
And so I think he's a good shift for the male stereotype, because in the first movie, he's, you know, embodies everything that the male stereotype is. Big, tough brute, isn't afraid of anything, not quick to show his emotions. At the end, he starts to show his emotions, realize that he can't do it alone. He needs his family. So then in the second movie, transitioning to being a stay-at-home dad, realizing it's not easy. I thought I could just sit and, you know, but then you got this superpowered baby named Jack, and he's sprouting powers left and right. I don't think eventually Elastigirl realized that she was kind of in the same situation that Bob was in the first movie. The villain played their hand, showed that they were, you know, not the good guys they thought. But I think it was really cool for Pixar to show that shift from like the typical male to now being this new generation of male, okay to show emotions. He, you know, visibly he was able to show that he's struggling. He told his best friend Frozone, he's like, "I don't know how she does this, taking care of these kids all day. I barely did it for like 10 minutes and the house is a wreck." So
yeah, that's awesome.
So I think for a society, we need to start young. We need to show the young kids that it is absolutely okay to show your emotions. It's okay that you have anger or sadness, depressed, any spectrum of emotions. Especially with being a father myself, you know, I have to be that example for my own son.
Yeah, we talked about a little bit about like anime last episode, and so like my hero, or the person that I like kind of emulate my life after, is Vegeta. If you know anything about Dragon Ball Z, like I've always been the guy that likes the edgy guy or the anti-hero. And as I think about even Vegeta through his course of his kind of character arc throughout Dragon Ball Z and into Super, even he changes, right? Like, so you think about, you know, he starts off, he's the bad guy. He ends up becoming like this kind of anti-hero. He ends up having a family. He doesn't really still show emotion until kind of towards the end of the Dragon Ball Z story, where he, you know, says like, "Hey, I'm going to sacrifice myself for my son and my wife." You know, he comes back and he kind of starts making admissions about, you know, rivalry, and, you know, he's not as strong as as Goku is, or Kakarot. And then you look at Super, and he has another baby, right? So and all of a sudden he becomes like the more of a doting father. Now he's not like super emotional. He's not like you know, he doesn't like cry and say I'm depressed or I'm sad and vocalize his emotions. But like there's kind of a character arc and a change in him where he becomes more family oriented. And, you know, in some of the movies and the series, he you know, he even fights the god of destruction to protect his wife. But it's funny that like you know, that change even happens in some of the other media that we consume, and just the incredible stories you told kind of made me think about him as well, and how he kind of opens up and changes through the literature that they've written him into.
Yeah, Vegeta had a little bit longer time to progress things, because you know, you think that starting in the Saiyan arc, he's a gun for hire for Frieza. You know, his whole purpose is that he's doing this for Frieza. His whole his whole race has been doing this for Frieza for as long as he can remember. And then you get to the Frieza saga, and then you realize, and, you know, Vegeta realizes, oh, Frieza's the one that destroyed my race. He's the reason why I'm the last surviving Saiyan. And so then that's where he starts to make the pivot towards being a good guy, because then he realizes that him and Kakarot both have a common enemy. It's Frieza. He's like, we can set aside our differences. And then I think it's right when Frieza kills Vegeta that he realizes that Goku is the one that's supposed to do this, because Vegeta's too prideful to do it, because he's going to get cocky, or he's going to get the leg up on Frieza, and he's going to do something, and he's going to realize oh, I was not the one supposed to do this. Because
Right.
every time that him and Frieza go against each other, Vegeta starts getting a little cocky, Frieza gets the upper hand, and then he gets defeated.
Yep.
And then I think the next shift, so I think over time, not only so he started off with a really cold heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think over time that heart started to thaw. And then once you get to the Buu saga, or it's like into Cell saga, into the Buu saga, like that heart is now completely thawed. Now it's starting to soften.
Sure.
And so because over time, between those arcs, you start to see his relationship with Trunks start to get better and better and better. Instead of constantly, pushing him to be stronger, he just, he says, like he still pushes them to get stronger, but he's also like, it's okay, you can go out and play. Becomes a little bit more lenient towards his raising of Trunks. Mm-hmm. And then when you get to Bra being born in Super, then you start to see so his heart's completely softened, but now it's flipped on its head. Now he gets to enjoy being a parent.
Yeah.
So now you're seeing him go out with Trunks to like the carnival in one episode, or there's a couple frames in the manga where you see he's actually holding his daughter, but you never saw him ever hold Trunks.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool, fun shift. And I know sometimes in Super they kind of like, have Goku make comments about it, because Goku doesn't have any daughters at all. So like this is completely, out of his realm. He's like, what's it like having a daughter? And so yeah, I could definitely see Vegeta being that transitional male stereotype, but now he's starting to be, what we want us to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plus, I need to redeem it so that Raptor will yell "My Bulma," because he does it. He does a pretty good Vegeta voice.
Yeah, I still have to hear that after he mentioned it last time. I was like, oh, I need to hear it.
Yeah, yeah, I know in last episode, really start to see some of the kinks in everyone's armor, and I think that's important that we see that, and then we also kind of encourage that too. I know it was a pretty rough episode for Raptor because he's got a personal experience of his brother dying by suicide, and so he was the one that kind of gave us the inside look of the fallout.
Right.
And so my next question is, besides Helplines, what do you think that we as a podcast can do? I know we can put the hotlines out there. We can say that our DMs are open, but is there something more tangible that we can do? Because I know we can't just talk to everybody and talk everybody off the cliff, and we can't also just push the hotline down their throat.
Right. There's the hotline is important, right? I think everybody should have that be made available. There's some other resources out there. There's some websites that people can look at, and if I'm not mistaken, they can chat with people as well, if that helps them feel a little more anonymous, because I know sometimes that is a concern. Supporting charities, I would love to find a way to, and I do. I know we might talk about this a little bit more later, but having us encourage folks to support those charities, point them in that right direction, and then just encouraging people to talk about their experience. It can be difficult. It can be difficult to open up, but as we share our experiences, and obviously become resources for them to listen to us, and for us to listen to them, sharing our experiences, I think it's important with whatever you're facing is, whether it's a mental health struggle, whether it is suicide, to somebody like Raptor, who is on the other side of that, right? Who's experienced that with somebody very, very close to him. Sharing that experience, as difficult as it might be, our experiences with, if even attempted suicide, that's important, because one, it lets people understand, what we've been through, and they can help relate, which is it's funny. Sometimes I feel like it's not important that people relate to you. I'm conflicted sometimes. I feel like people should be able to open up despite having the not relating. They should be able to be open, but at the same time, there's something endearing about hey man, we've been through something similar. Even folks that I had a good friend who I kind of helped through a divorce, because I've been through a divorce, and he was struggling to understand the situation, struggling to understand why, why would she do this to me, and I should have done this, I should have done that, and just helping him, letting him vent to me, and then being like, hey, can I offer some feedback, or do you want to hear what my experience was like? It really helped him, even though he still struggled. It helped him kind of get over the hump with like moving forward with his experience. So there's something to be said for that, to be able to find somebody who does have that relationship. My goal would be one day that people are open enough to be able to talk to whoever they need to without needing that. But that relationship is the first step, and if they understand we're real, we provide them as many resources as we can. We encourage the support. We encourage the charity, different charities that they can support as well. Let them know they're not alone. You're never alone, even though it might feel that way. And social media is a great thing for that, because there are people you can reach out to. There are people that you can find who are like your people, despite who's around you. I think those are the things that we can start doing, and along the way, hopefully, we can find maybe more ways to be even more impactful and more helpful to people.
Yeah. As much as I love to say that social media has really helped like bridge the gap with communications, I also want to tread with caution that social media, while it can be good, it also kind of magnifies the loneliness that people might feel. Like, especially if someone doesn't have like a huge following, they maybe just started on the social media, and they throw a message out to the ether and it doesn't get any response. It kind of magnifies that loneliness. So while yes, like for us streamers, social media is a great platform for us to kind of put our message out there. It's for those that don't have that, just kind of tread with caution. There's plenty of resources, like we'll have the text line posted in the show notes. We'll have other helplines for if you need help. Just don't rely solely on social media to get your voice heard. Talk to someone that you're close to, you have a phone number for. Definitely reach out to any of these hotlines.
Yeah, I would also encourage people to, even though you may be in an emotional state, right? Especially if you're feeling like you want to end your life, right? You wouldn't expect an answer if you went out into the woods and just screamed like into nothingness. So that social media can feel like that. It's, to your point, especially if there's nobody on the other side of that. So the direct line is always better. It should never be this kind of blanket statement out there. Reach out to somebody you're comfortable with. I would hope there is somebody in your life that you can connect with or be honest with. If you feel like that's not the case, then there are resources out there, right? And I want you to 100% utilize those, because trust me, you not being around would make an impact in somebody's life. You might not feel that way, it would, but you making a decision to take your own life is just it's. I don't want to say it's never the answer, but there are opportunities for you to get better. It can't get better if you're not here. It cannot get better. So, we want you to move forward, and it's okay to have bad days. Not every day is going to be a good day, and it's okay to have more bad days than good. But if you're moving forward, then you have the opportunity to improve your situation, and that's important.
Yeah. One thing I like to tell my wife, because sometimes she gets, she really struggles with the things that she's working on, and she wants to go 0 to 100 right from the get-go. But sometimes I have to remind her it's okay if you can only go 0 to 5, 0 to 10. Right. Sometimes just taking any step forward is still a step forward. So yeah, don't feel like you have to go 0 to 100. No one is going 0 to 100 from the get-go. Yeah. We all go at our own pace. We all I said yesterday, sometimes the things that we're going through to some people might look like a speed bump, but to another person it's a cliff for them.
Yeah.
So everyone's struggle is different. Everyone, it looks different from the outside, it looks different from the inside. Definitely, don't invalidate what someone is going through.
Yeah.
Just be there for them, help them through, and then so I wanted to pivot. Is there any does your community support any charities?
Yeah, so I'm part of a larger organization known as Equinox Gaming. I'm the founder, and so we've done several charity events. A lot of our things have been around. We've done so animals are near and dear to my heart, so we've supported charities. So one of the ones that I absolutely love in this area with me is called the Love Pit, which is a Dallas-based organization that is driving awareness around pit bulls and pit bull stigma. Because I'm a huge fan of pit bulls. My baby that you saw earlier, she's a pit bull, and I absolutely adore them. That's one of the ones we supported. We've done things like Stack Up, supporting veterans. Veterans are also near and dear to me. I have many veterans in my family. Veteran suicide, since we're on the topic, is huge. 22 a day, I think many people are familiar with, but if you're not, at least 22 veterans a day on average take their own lives due to things like PTSD. So, that's very near and dear to my heart as well. So we've also supported that. We also try to do things within the community because our own internal community, because we know we all struggle. So we've supported each other and we've done things from paying people's rent to buying them groceries, like to help to get them over the hump, to paying for schooling and then certifications. So we do our best to give back. Us as an organization, we feel like we're not, and many gaming orgs or content creation orgs that are out there, they're about like being the biggest, best, making money, all that kind of stuff. Ours is really, it started as a family with 5 people who just love each other and want to see each other succeed in life, and we've just grown from there. So that is our goal, is to continue that mindset, is like, how can we support each other, how can we make the world a better place. So we're always on the trying to think about ways to do that, whether it's in the larger world as a whole or even internally.
Awesome. Yeah, I was gonna ask you what charities, but you already listed them all off. Trying to figure out the term, because you kind of already hit it on the head. All right, so there's no real easy way to transition to this next part. I know you mentioned at the top of it that you've had suicide attempts. I know I've had 2 of them. So if you want to talk first, or I can talk first, it doesn't matter to me. But just so that people know, we're real. We both tried to commit suicide for our own reasons. It's real messy to talk about. I know hindsight's so easy. It's like, oh, well, everything was going great then. But, caution you, in the moment, it doesn't feel. So the one that speaks to me the most is I was in high school. I just started dating my now wife. I was about ready to graduate. I was still living with my mom and dad. But just like, I don't know, I felt empty in that moment. Like, yeah, in hindsight, things were going great. And to see how it is now, it's pretty dang good. But in the moment, so to give a little bit of context, I wasn't the best student at all. I barely got through classes. I skated by with the skin of my teeth. When I got to, because of the No Child Left Behind, even if I failed, up until high school, I was still able to progress to the next grade because that was in place. So I never really learned that I actually had to do the work to succeed. And so when I got to high school, that's when everything flipped. I didn't have that crutch anymore. I had to progress on my own and do things on my own. So at the point where I tried to take my own life, I was a super senior. So what that is if you don't have enough credits to get into the next to graduate, you have to have a certain amount of credits to graduate. If you don't have enough, you have to attend another year. It was in that same year that I met my now wife. And other great opportunities happened. I also got Eagle Scout that same year. I started Boy Scouts when I was 16. They literally had to fudge the numbers by a couple months just so I could qualify, because when I started was a couple months after I had my 16th birthday. And so like you know, if you start at 16, you literally have to start that day. And then to get your to get all your merit badges and stuff. So they had to fudge the numbers a little bit, but I did go through all the steps I needed, and I got my Eagle Scout. So I had that going for me. I was actually starting to do well in school, only because I was being, you know, pushed by my girlfriend at the time. She's like, "I'm gonna dump you if you don't graduate." So I had that pressure. So there was a lot of pressure on me. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. You know, my parents do well, and they tried to, you know, they did everything that they could. But you know, so because I was not spending a lot of time at home, I was spending time with girlfriends and friends. I was never home. I was always out and about. So when they moved from one house to the other, I helped with the move, but I didn't get to pick my room. Like, I didn't have any say. So when they finally moved into the new house, to be honest, I literally slept in a closet. Like, there was no other room for me because they didn't account for me, or I didn't, you know, help them in whatever reason. So my bed, so my brother shared a room with my grandpa, and then I had the closet of that same room. I didn't have a door. I literally had like a blow-up mattress on the floor with my brother's clothes right above me and some of my clothes above me as well. So like, from the outside looking in, my life looked like shit. You know, almost like a redneck Harry Potter almost. Yeah. Except for I didn't have the benefit of having freaking magic.
Owls.
No owls, no nothing. The only solace I got was I had a window right outside the closet that I can then step out of and sit on the partial roof that goes over above the porch. So like, that was my space. I didn't have my own room, so I had to find wherever I could be private. And so, you know, eventually it got to the point where I just like, I looked at my life and I'm like, despite the things that are like the good things that are happening, I, you know, put them up to the side. Just, I don't know. It just didn't feel like things were going my way. I was working my ass off trying to graduate. I literally it was literally down to the wire to get certain classes up to a certain point so that my teacher would let me, would give me a passing grade so I can graduate. And I just thought, what's the point? I was, you know, it felt like in that moment my parents were giving up on me, because when, you know, they would talk to their church friends, I barely came up in conversation, it felt like, because I was a super senior. You know, you don't want to, you know, that's not something to applaud. That's, you know, and so I kind of felt like I was a burden more than I was a help to anybody. If my dad needed help with something, he asked my brother before he asked me. If my mom needed help with something, she'd ask my sister that's just below me, or any of my other siblings. Besides prom, I wasn't given a whole lot of attention. It was also at that moment that it was also around that time that I also had my back injury too. I was in advanced weightlifting, and we were learning how to squat. And it was the second time that we were doing squats and weightlifting, and one of the classmates thought it would be a fun prank to go around and add an extra weight on one side without telling anybody. And my spotter didn't do his job by telling me that. He just let it happen because they were buddies. And I went to do my squat, and I noticed that my right side was heavier than my left. And but I was already in the squat. Like, I already had it up on my shoulders, and you know, I put it back on the bar, didn't think anything of it. Next day I couldn't even walk. I barely could feel my legs. I kind of thought I was gonna die. I was like, I'm paralyzed. How the hell did that happen? You know, and then I'm going through my head, and it was because the extra weight was added on. It just didn't sink in right then at that moment. So I was already dealing with the back pains too, because there's just some days it's just excruciating to walk. I went to a chiropractor a couple times to get an adjustment, but it just never really fixed it. I know I had to do physical therapy, but I was 18. Well, no, 18 turning 19 that year, and I felt like, no, this I can just walk this off. I just have to take a little bit of pain pills to get through it, and then it'll be fine. Take 4 ibuprofen, give it about an hour, I'll feel fine. And it was so all these things were starting to compound on me, and I wasn't seeing any light. All I was seeing was darkness. And so I grabbed some rope that was down in the basement, because that's where my dad had all his tools. We didn't have a garage. All his tools are in the basement. So I grabbed some of his rope, and because I was in Boy Scouts, I knew how to tie my knots. So I paid my the hangman's noose.
Yeah.
And I had it set up in my closet room to hang myself there. I tried to make sure that I was quiet, that way they didn't hear that I put a hook, an anchored hook in the roof.
Yeah.
And that night I was gonna do it. So I didn't tell anybody anything. I kind of just lived life like it was normal. And then that night, it was a Friday night, and I went to get everything set up, and before I can even get the rope put up, my brother asked me if I would play Smash Bros with him. And if I didn't play Smash Bros with him, I wouldn't be here. I had everything all set up. The rope was underneath my pillow. The hook was in place. So in that moment, to be asked for help, my brother just wanted to play Smash Bros with his brothers. He was having a rough week with school, and he just needed something to unwind. And so, but him asking me to play Smash Bros with him was enough to see that I was needed in a moment when everyone else wasn't needing me.
Right.
So, in hindsight, I could see that everything was fine. I was making too big of a scare of everything. The following week, I passed one of the classes I was worried about because I turned in just enough work. I'm still dealing with my back pain, and I'm being almost 33 now. I still have that back pain. It flares up every now and then. But, a week later, I didn't have any of those pains. But in that moment, if I wouldn't have been asked, I probably wouldn't even be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're still here, man.
Yeah.
Did you ever? Did your brother know this story? Have you shared it with him?
No. In all honesty, I haven't shared it with anybody. To me, it didn't feel like I needed to. I'm here. I didn't feel like I needed to, but when I had that situation happen on Wednesday, where a friend of mine was talking about it, for me, it kind of unearthed those feelings I was feeling, which is why I was so quick to drop everything. So yeah, that was pretty rough to talk about. And if my parents ever hear this, I'm okay. Everything's fine. Yeah. It was just a really rough point in my life.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it was as simple as like, hey, do you want to play a game with me? And I think if I had to put emphasis on it, like that is a very simple thing to ask somebody, but like look at what a huge difference it made, right? Like it literally saved your life to feel like somebody cared about you, wanted to have your time, you meant something to them, they chose you to spend time with, right? And it might seem insignificant because it's just a game, but like it literally changed your future.
My brother needed me in that moment, whether even it was just to try and unlock some new characters.
Sure.
But
that's why it's so important that like you give people the time of day, you talk to them, and it's not the single serving friend. It's like, man, are you really okay? Like that could, you know, that could literally save their life.
Yeah, that's why, like, being almost 33, I don't want those single serving friends. The kind of friend I want is the 3 o'clock friend, or the 3 in the morning friend.
Right.
Like if shit hits the fan, I pick up my phone and I, call you up. You're most likely gonna answer. Yeah, you'll be a little groggy. Like, wait, let me at least get some coffee in me first.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the kind of friends I want now.
Yeah, those meaningful connections can go a long way, right? It's just people need to know somebody cares about them. And if you're the type of person that doesn't care about anybody else, that's a problem. I mean, that probably says more about you than it does about the people who need you. So, it's something to work on if you're one of those people. But hopefully you're not, and to make sure people understand how much you value them. There are times when I will go through like my DMs and I will just unannounced, no reason, I'll reach out to people that I know might need to hear it, or the people that I love, and just say, hey, man, I fucking love you. I want to make sure you know that. I don't need anything else. I'm not trying to bug you. I'm not in a bad mood. Like I don't need help. I just want you to know that I am so happy that you are in my life. Like you bring joy. I love when I hear you talk. I love you to hear you laugh. Whatever it is, just so people understand like how valuable they are to you. And I'm not doing that to save their life. I mean, it might save their life at the end of the day, but my goal is just so people understand how much I care about them, and that can go so far.
Yeah, your intentions are just to kind of just reconnect and say, hey, I'm thinking about you in this moment.
Absolutely. I mean, it just so they know how valuable they are to me. To kind of, my situation, I've attempted suicide actually 3 times. And probably the most impactful and the most recent, honestly. I was of similar age. I was about 16. So somewhere along the age of like 12, when I started getting interested in women and relationships, um, somehow along the way, and I still to this day don't really know how, um, stopped finding kind of value in myself and started like defining myself by the relationships that I had, which is like super super unhealthy for anybody that's listening. Um, and so from the age of like 12 and realistically probably until I was 27, I struggled with depression because I couldn't seem to find value in who I was as a person, and I was very much like one of those codependent people. In my early years, I really didn't, you're 12, 13, like those aren't real relationships. You're just kind of like, I'm interested in you, you're cute kind of thing. I really didn't find any connections, but like as I got into my high school age, um, I started becoming like more interested in people, and there happened to be a girl who I was really really interested in, and I was in the robotics team. She was in the robotics team. Her boyfriend was not at our school. He was older. We were both 16, and so we spent a lot of time together with like robotics. We would go on trips. We would be there after school, and despite like school going well and everything else, like that was the thing that I was focusing on, was just kind of that relationship in her. And even though she was in a relationship, it was complicated, and like I kiss you, you kiss me kind of thing. And at one point on a trip, I remember her telling me that she loved me, and I was like, well, this is really like this is it, like this is the one. And as an adult, obviously, again reflecting on it, it's silly, but for me, being that type of person who was so codependent, all of a sudden like, my value becomes within this person, right? Um, Fast forward a little bit, and the trip's over and whatever else, and we get back home, and it's like, well, no, that's not what I meant. I was tired, and we were on the phone late. It was 2 a.m., and I'm staying with my boyfriend, and I'm not leaving him for you. And so that kind of triggered my depression even more. It was pretty much off and on. Because I couldn't find, even though I was in relationships off and on, I couldn't find value. I still wasn't, there was nothing to me that I saw as a future. So I went into a really dark spiral. I'm the type of guy, I'm the kid that would be sitting there writing in his notebook like the poetry that was super dark. and listening to the sad songs, which obviously just kind of makes it even worse. And I had a good friend who actually was my neighbor across the street, who was a year or two younger than me. We used to spend a lot of time together. We'd play video games. We would do sleepovers and stuff on Friday nights, and we'd stay up all night playing games and PlayStation and whatever else. But we would get together and we would just do dumb stuff. Like Jackass was around at the time. There was all kinds of those kinds of shows, and like it was kind of the start of like being dumb things to get famous. So we kind of hopped on that train.
Nope.
But I remember thinking to myself like nothing that matters, man. Like it doesn't like this girl doesn't care about me, and this I've cared about people for so long, and I try to connect with them. I try to tell them how I feel, and it just doesn't work. And so I actually went through we were spending the night at his house, and his room was down in the basement, and it was kind of like an add-on. But down in the basement as well, there was like cleaning chemicals and things like that. And we were kind of just goofing around, and we were like, oh, let's just like you squirt this in your mouth, you squirt this in your mouth, and whatever. And I actually went through, and we were doing like shots of like it was just like dumb stuff, right? Like shots of like whatever chemical we could find. And so for what I was gonna do was I was going to, when he went to sleep, I was gonna mix all these chemicals that were underneath the sink, bleach, whatever else, and drink it. So I ended up doing that. We went to sleep that night. Like he was laying in bed, and I'm in the across the room in bed, and I mixed just all this stuff together and ended up drinking it. I really don't remember a whole lot after that. I remember kind of like being really, really sick and like vomiting, but it woke him up. And of course he woke his parents up. And I was rushed to the hospital. Had to like pump my stomach and do all this kind of stuff. But, like I'm really lucky that there was somebody there who was paying attention to me, like in that moment. And like thinking back on it, like it's just so silly. And because of the value that I didn't see in myself. And I think a lot of people feel that way sometimes. But it's just, I don't know. It's these things that we do sometimes, and even to your point, like in the spur of the moment, because we're thinking about what's going on now. Like, I don't feel good now. My back hurts. To your point, like nobody cares about me. They've got me sleeping in a closet. For me, it's like, well, I'm never going to be in a relationship. I've been trying to do this and that, and this girl told me she loved me, and then she's still with her boyfriend, and all I can do is listen to sad songs, and like you're so focused in that moment that you don't think about the future of your decision, or what what could be, and how it will be better. And we do these things, and it could obviously change your life or somebody else's. So.
The Raptors' point yesterday when he was talking about the fallout that happened, he made just something to quote him is that he says that the pain of that you're going through when you do the deed and you're not here anymore, that pain that you leave is just going to be spread across all the people that have any significant like commonality with you, whether they were a friend, a brother, sister, mom, dad, you name it. That that pain of you being gone is just going to spread to every single one of them. So then, thinking in hindsight, like if I did the deed, who would have hurt? Well, obviously, my wife now, she wouldn't have been my wife. She would have just been my girlfriend. She would have been devastated. She probably would have thought that she wasn't enough. And then you have, my brother and 3 sisters, they would have been devastated. And then my parents and my grandparents. So, well, yes, the pain was, in that moment felt like it was, the end. Now I just think of like, if it would have happened, all these people would have been affected.
Yeah. I think it would have been terrible for my family. My brother, I have a younger brother who's 7 years younger than me, and I've actually helped him kind of overcome depression, or been a sounding board for him overcoming depression, and almost attempted suicide. I won't say attempted, but he was damn near close, through a divorce as well. and I was somebody he could talk to. Man, I can only imagine that if I had taken my own life.
Yeah, wouldn't have been there for him. I'm glad that there was somebody there to hear you get sick, to then alert the people that needed to take you to the hospital. I'm glad that your attempt failed. I mean, I know it's I know, like, you don't want to talk about like the failures, but like I'm thankful that failure happened. I'm glad
Absolutely.
that someone was there for you. I'm so damn. Though my brother doesn't know that he did it, I'm just so damn proud of him for helping me in that moment. So
yeah, absolutely. And
you never know what that, just even asking, just, can you play games with me? What could it do for somebody? Like, it could just be just enough to get them to not do something the unthinkable. Like, it's like after we got done playing, I think we played like 4 hours. We were up till God knows when. I remember I didn't text my girlfriend that night to say, good night. She was upset with me the next day. My mom and dad were upset because we stayed up forever, because I think we had something planned for we had something for Saturday that we were supposed to help with, but we were just dead tired. But you know what? I didn't care, because as soon as I woke up the next day, I immediately untied that noose. I snuck the rope back into the garage or basement, whatever. I think I left the anchor bolt up in the ceiling just because I didn't want to have to get back up and take it down, but who cares? My parents ended up moving out of the house anyways. So I'm glad that, I was asked for just a game. And it was probably one of the best nights I ever had with my brother, up until the point where he became 21 and then he got to drink, and that was fun too, because the first time he went drinking, I think I went with him, and he got smashed. It was fun to see. I don't personally drink, but you know what? To each their own. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my brother doesn't know, but I'm just so damn proud of him. So glad he asked.
Yeah.
So now that we're done being, all cryy and talking about our attempts, I want to let everybody know that, we're human too. We have struggles. Hopefully with us being open about our attempts and the things that we were going through in that moment, even from the gaze of hindsight, I hope that it's, could be a beacon for you in your moment, or for a friend of yours that are going through a rough time, that we're human too. We all have struggles. We all think the unthinkable, but even somebody being there, waking up, hearing you puking your guts out because you took a suicide cocktail, or your brother asking for a game of Smash Bros. You never know what you can do for somebody else. So to get out of this like really down and deep subject, so want to come into a close for the podcast. Before we do that, there's one last question I wanted to ask. I asked this of Raptor and Hangry yesterday. It's kind of, so anytime I start like a new job or I get like a new friendship, I always kind of ask like few questions, just kind of getting an idea of like what this kind of person is. And for me, the quickest way to kind of gauge what kind of person they are is I usually ask the same question. And so I'll ask the question, and then I'll kind of go into like what I kind of see based on what people's answers are. So the question I ask is, if you had $20 million, all taxes paid, what would you do with it? And the reason why I ask this question is because usually they give like one of three answers. If they give that they're going to buy, a boat, a really cool car, a big extravagant house, material things, immediately that tells me they're a material person. They're going to either work a bunch of hours to make money and put it in a bank, and trying to amass wealth so that they can flex on people.
Sure.
Or they might be like the person that will try and do things really quick. whether they fudge their time code or time clock so that they're getting overtime when they really aren't working overtime. I've seen people do that, and they answered the material question. So usually when they ask that, I say material. I think of material. The next kind of answer that someone will give is, oh, I'll set my family up for life. Pay bills for my family. I'll get them all houses and stuff like that. That immediately tells me that they could have thought about themselves, but they immediately thought of their family. They wanted to take care of their family.
Yeah.
And then, so that's always a good thing to see. Typically, the material one kind of gives me a little bit of a red flag, because if they are material minded, they're not necessarily relationship minded.
Sure.
So, and then the family question, that gives me like an idea they're family oriented, so that that's someone that I want to align myself with, because I typically go the family route too.
Yeah.
The last thing that somebody can say is, I don't care about anything, all I want to get is hookers and blow. And of course, those are the kind of people I don't want in my life, because I'm married. I've never been to a strip club, don't plan on going. Like, no, red flag, stay away from me. I'll work with you, but stay away from me. So if you had $20 million, taxes, don't even worry about taxes, you had $20 million to work with, what would you do with it?
Yeah, $20 million is a lot of money. I can't even imagine what $1 million would be like, even though that's like not so much in today's society. But there are a couple things come to mind. So I know my brother is he's struggled. He's a former Marine, and he's had some some PTSD issues and things like that. And so I would like to take care of him and his family. I've got a niece. He's got another niece, or I have another niece on the way. She'll be here in about a month, I think. 2 months. She'll be born. So I want to make sure that they're good. My parents too. I need to get them out of where they live, honestly, because they don't live in a great part of the U.S. So I'd like to get them somewhere stable and happy and healthy. But man, honestly, the rest, if I would just pay off my debt, which it wouldn't even come anywhere close to $20 million. Yeah. But I would spend a lot of money on animals, man. Like I love animals so much. So I'd probably spend a lot of money helping out, places, especially like dogs. Like dogs have been my savior since I was a kid. I learned how to walk from a dog. I've had dogs my whole life. They've been my best friend. They always listen, so like I would probably look into either helping out at a shelter, or spending a lot of money investing in things like that, because I think animals are important to me, and I think they deserve a chance. And there's a lot of underfunded, undervalued places like that could use it.
Yeah. So usually when I get like a new friendship, not only do I like hearing like what someone else's answers is, but then based on like key things about them, I try and like plant my own answer and maybe what they might say. And you definitely hit it right on the head. I figured you were kind of a family guy, and definitely first episode when you were talking about you're all about pets, saying how you learned how to walk from a dog, I immediately knew if he had $20 million, he would probably make himself a puppy ranch. I could see that happening. Bunch of acreage, and just like go to an animal shelter. Is like, I want one of everything.
Yeah, I will take everybody that's here. Let's go. Yep. Absolutely.
And so my answer usually is definitely I would help my family. My parents love their house, but I would probably help to fix some things around it that they need help with. I know my mom wants a she shed, and my dad's not too quick on making that a reality, because he's been dealing with chemotherapy, and he's also got he was a veteran for the Air Force, and so he's on 100% disability because of his PTSD. And so so he's got his struggles, and I know sometimes he can't always help with things around the house, but definitely would use that to help them. Would also help my sisters and my brother, even if it's just creating a college fund for their kids. When I give 20 million as like a monetary value, the reason why I say 20 million is like $1 million, you could find a way to spend $1 million in one day. It's real easy to do. Like all you have to do is go to maybe 4 different stores, with the dealership being one of them. But with 20 million, it kind of gives someone, a little bit more room to grow in their answer. It's like, oh, well, if I had 20 million, this could be used for, a much bigger purpose.
Right.
So the other side of my answer is not only will I help family, but because of being part of different Twitch communities and getting to have, you know, some of my best friends are now are Twitch streamers. Raptor being one of them, Angry's another. You're getting up on that list. I would find a way to like benefit streamers as a whole. Like I love building PCs. I think it's really cool. Probably even if it's just like a PC shop where I'm building PCs and I'm just shipping them out for free. You know, I could be like the free version of Power GPU. So I was like, you get a PC and you get a PC, you get a PC, just because I would love to just bless somebody in their setup. So that it's one thing they didn't have to worry about. Oh, you don't need a PC? All right, well, let's give you some dope ass lights, or let's completely redo your audio. And another thing I like to do is I like to give free emotes to new affiliates. I would love to do that all day. Like, just you know, that is my job. I'm just gonna give away free shit.
It's funny you say that. One of my goals that I've kind of been trying to manifest this year is I want to give away a decent PC to somebody. Like, you know, I want to find a way to either save up enough money or maybe even make a relationship with you know, a PC company where we can do that by the end of the year. So I think it would just be awesome. There are a lot of really amazing people out there who find streaming as a solace, or it's a mental health refuge for them, right? Like, honestly, for me, like early on, you know, it wasn't about the people, but it became about the people. And now, like when I miss a stream, it's not like I don't like if I miss especially a Wednesday, like if I miss a Wednesday stream because it's like the middle between my Sunday and my Friday nights, that it's kind of a break for me. Like my mental health takes a hit because I just miss talking to people and having that time and having them stop by and seeing them. And, you know, sometimes we're wild and crazy and whatever else, but that for me provides kind of that midweek break where I can reconnect. It grounds me. It helps me see how everybody's been doing since the last time I saw them. And so, like, I would love to be able to provide that for somebody else. So I love that that's something that you would be interested in doing too.
Yeah. I just think that, like, as much as I can do for myself, I've always wanted to do for others. Even in a small way. Like, I remember there's moments where, like, we didn't have a whole lot of money in the bank, and like we're just, you know, limping till Friday, but then, you know, my heartstrings pull at somebody. Like I'm on Quick Trip and I'm getting gas for my car, and I see like a mom and their kids, you know, struggling to put gas in their own car. So you know, there's times where I'll, you know, it might not be much, but, you know, hey, here's $5 to go towards what you need. Or a kid is crying because they want like a candy, and their parents is like, can't really do it. We can't afford it. And I'll say, hey, I'll buy that candy. Like, it's no big deal. Or blessing someone that's in the drive-through. Like, hey, how much is the total behind me? Oh, it's that, you know, it's this. I'm like, all right, I'll pay for them too. Just tell them I have a good day, or pay it forward or whatever.
Absolutely.
So, never realize what kind of impact you can leave on somebody. So I try to teach my kids, like, always leave something better than you left it. So
yeah, I mean, it kind of plays into what we were talking about earlier, just that little bit of moment, that connection. You know, for the folks that you have regular interaction with, you want to go deeper, but that shouldn't discount the value of the random act of kindness, right? So you want to be able to just help somebody out. It's not about doing it with the intention of it coming back to you, though people often say, you know, what you give, you'll get back fivefold or whatever else, tenfold. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. Do it because you have the ability to help somebody else. Do it out of love. And when you do something out of love, there should never be an expectation of any kind of return.
Yeah. I don't, you know, I love that you started streaming and then found the purpose afterward. I know when I started streaming, I started for the wrong reasons. I just wanted to be honest, 100% honest. I wanted an excuse to play video games without getting in trouble by my wife. I'm being dead honest, because you know, I would say, hey, I want to build a PC, and she's like, well, what can you do with it? I was like, well, I can do my graphic stuff with that. And then she'd be like, oh, okay. And then I said, hey, but I can also stream, and there's a potential to make money out of it eventually. But then, you know, I just wanted an excuse to play video games, you know, and have people, you know, join in. And I quickly learned, like the first couple streams, that's the complete wrong reason to do it. Because because then I'm looking for the wrong metrics. I'm not looking for viewers. I'm not looking for subs and stuff like this. All I'm seeing at that point is dollar signs.
Right.
So then after doing it off and on for the last 2 years, I realized I'm not much of a streamer. I don't have that pull for people to watch me, and that's okay. Like, I know when I do an art stream, I get typically more people because, I get to talk about the process of what I do for, making an emote. Like, I'm making Raptor like a, remember that the emoji, like the cat jam where he's just kind of just dancing. I'm in the process of making one for him, but it's Raptor.
Okay, that's awesome.
And it's a huge struggle. I hate animation so bad. Like,
animation can be rough. Yeah.
It's just not something I learned how to do, and there's resources, but I don't want to spend an hour watching someone animate something. But like, so like when I'll do an art stream, those are always fun. Those get a decent amount of people in there. But game wise, I'm shit at games. I just play games to play games. Like, I've been playing Pokemon since it came out. But I didn't realize until Gen 5 that there was a thing called IVs and EVs.
Oh, yes.
No idea. It's because they don't advertise it.
No.
And it wasn't until Gen 5 that they really started to say, hey, these Pokemon have these things.
The hidden stats,
Also didn't learn that they also can have egg moves till about Gen 5 as well. And so when we got to Gen 8, then I was like, oh, well, I know they have IVs, I know they have EVs. I know that I can also, I knew shinies was a thing, but like I didn't like pursue finding them up until like Legends Arceus, because Legends Arceus made it easier.
Right.
You get level 10 completion, and your chances of finding a shiny of that particular Pokemon like almost double. And then if you complete your Pokedex with level 10s in all of them, then you get the shiny charm, and your chances are even higher. But I found so many shinies already just in that game, but I didn't know it was a thing until now. I'm a pretty mediocre gamer, so I realized that I wasn't much for streaming. Sure. That's mainly why I wanted to do this. Because right now we're not posting these videos. It's just I'm just grabbing the audio from it, and we're doing that. But eventually we'll get to a point where once I get all the overlays and figure out. So Discord does a funny thing. So based on how like I have things set up on my computer, so I have you on the left hand side of my main monitor. But if I make that screen smaller or bigger, it makes the camera on my OBS change. And then if I have 2 people, it looks different. If I have 3 people, it's like this weird stack. It is. We had that issue yesterday when Boothby dropped out, and then it went down to 3 people, so I had to fix things. I was like, so eventually we'll get to the point where I can record these, and we'll do these, post them to a YouTube channel or something. And you guys are more than welcome to start streaming if you want. It don't bother me at all. I know you guys are streaming. I know Raptor does Tuesdays and Thursdays. Angry is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. With sometimes a Saturday, he'll do like a cooking stream. I don't know Boothby's schedule. And I
know he's getting back at it.
And then Big Bosch, I think he's mostly on the weekends right now, just because his week is kind of crazy.
Right.
And I'm the odd one out because I don't stream right now, which is fine. So I have no idea where I was going with that, but I just love that you found your purpose in it, and that's why I wanted to start the podcast, because then I have a purpose too. Because I've always been kind of the person that is kind of in the background. So in high school, I did theater, but I wasn't on stage. I was behind. I helped build the sets. I helped set the lights. I would help make sure everyone was in their place to make the people on stage look brighter. So that was always the kind of guy I was. So then to make a shift and do something like this, where I'm a host, you guys are all, you're all co-hosting with me, but I get to make a product now, and I get to have that purpose now. And so I'm finding my purpose in this. I think that's awesome.
Are you I think I know the answer to this, but how are you enjoying it so far?
I'm not the greatest when it comes to public speaking. So, and it's just like, so if I have notes for a particular episode, I get super nervous that I was like, oh, I got to make sure I get all the points. So then I go like a million miles an hour. I was like,
Yeah.
this was supposed to be an hour long, and now it's only, 20 minutes.
Yeah, right.
So with the help of Raptor, he's telling me, hey, slow down. We have time. Like, we don't have constraints. This is our thing. So I'm gradually learning, and I know that also helped with how I did the intro. I wrote down what my intro was going to be. I said it, and then I let there be a pause, and then we went into the topic at hand.
Absolutely.
So over time, these will get better and better and better, and then eventually posting them either live or after the fact with the actual video, that'll be a different thing. But I think Hangry's point yesterday, even if we just save one life, that is still a victory.
Oh yeah, I mean that's more than you could hope, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my goal with this was always just like, how can I help one person? Because it's kind of like the law of multiplication, right? Like it's something I learned about when I was, as I became a manager, a leader in my career. If I can teach one person something, or if I can help one person, they go out and they teach, 2 people, 3 people, and then so on and so forth. As that continues, the one person that you've helped now turns into 100 people impacted, right?
Yeah.
So that's really all it takes, is if you can, help that one person. But even if it is just that one person, and even if it saves one life, especially, because that's invaluable, then it is 100% worth it, day in, day out.
Yeah, because not only, if we save one life, then we have to think of like what kind of drive they'll end up having afterwards. Maybe saving one life could be the threshold that it takes to have more impact, because then they'll start preaching the message like, hey, because of this I was saved. Much to your point about the love multiplication, it could be just as much, it could just be the point where we saved someone's life and they just became a better dad.
Sure.
Or maybe they became a better manager, because then they started to see what their output was not having the good results, and then they had this complete 180, and now they're seeing better results.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna go ahead and call this episode, bring it to a close. Just to preface, we are not professionals in any way, shape, or form. I don't want to misconstrue by us pointing out facts or giving lists to different helplines that we in any way, shape, or form, like any advice that we give, should be taken as fact. These are just things that we have learned over time, whether it be from personal experience or seeing it secondhand. So we are in no way, shape, or form a professional. We are just ordinary dudes coming together, hoping that just us being vulnerable to you is enough to help you, or to help lead you to getting help. So definitely, if you're in crisis, go to the show notes. I will make sure to list all the different helplines, charities that might help, just any resource that you can think of. I'll do my best to make sure it's in the show notes. So as we call this episode to a close, I just want to let you know that if you found this podcast helpful in any way, shape, or form, or you just want to suggest topics for us to cover at a later time, the best way you can do that is to leave a review on whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. We are currently on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pocket Casts, and more are coming as this thing grows. We will definitely read your reviews, and we will read them even on a future episode. We'll read them aloud. I might give a couple to Tyr, a couple to Raptor, just to have you read. But yeah, any suggestion you have for how we can improve, or just topics you want to hear us go over, definitely leave it in your review and we'll read it. We shoot for 5 stars, but if we haven't hit there yet, let us know how we can get there as well. While life might get you down, we stand tall and we forge on.